Hey, welcome back. So today we're going to be taking a look at the track Unearthing the Legend, which I wrote using just Nucleus Lite Edition after some of you requested it. So today we're going to take a look at that, how I made the whole thing just using that sample library and only using 14 tracks, which is absolutely nothing. Like normally my sessions get to like 80 to 100 tracks. I know people who go way beyond that. So, you know, for orchestral music, I think I did pretty okay with this. So let's get into it, and yeah, I hope you find this valuable. So here we are in the session. Now I'm going to play the track for you so you can obviously hear it. You might have already heard it on my channel, but let's play through it again so you can hear it, and then we'll go through and have a look at it. I'm going to highlight all the MIDI information so you can kind of see everything as we go along. That's it, that's the track. So we've got the track here. Now I'm just going to quickly show you, we've got Nucleus Lite Edition. So if you've seen my Nucleus Lite Edition overview video, you'll see what the differences are between Nucleus Full and Lite Edition. But obviously, basically in the full version, you have legatos, you have solo instruments as well, and you've got more articulations. So that's really useful for a more detailed approach. If you are literally just starting out, this is an awesome solution. Or if you're traveling and you just have a MacBook with like 8 GB of RAM, this is also really good. Lite Edition, really handy. So you've got different patches here. You've got multi-patches, single patches, that's just the individual articulations here. Like this as individual patches rather than one, but you can obviously deactivate them by pressing the buttons as well in there. Then you've got performance patches, which I go through in that overview video, so you can check that out. They're really good. I didn't use them in this track because of the style of track that it is, but I'm thinking maybe in the future I might do something with those and make a separate video. Then we've got the sound design with which is the pads, which I'll show you in a bit. Again, so all of that is more detailed in the full version of Nucleus, a lot more detailed, but this is a great little starting point, and you guys requested that I make a track with this, so here we are. So let's start out. How did I start this out? So I know that people always like to know how you start a track and build it, and honestly, it is different every single time. There is no one way how to start a track properly. But the way I did it was I was just trying to create some chord progressions. So I kind of started with this chord progression on the strings, just playing around, you know, with the ensemble patch on my keyboard. And then I believe I got this brass section here, which we'll get to in a bit. And then there were two separate ideas, but I managed to kind of work them into one track. And you'll notice if we go through this in a bit with some of the theory stuff, I'm not going to go too in depth, don't worry, but there is a lot of modulation going on in this and some really interesting stuff that other composers use in films a lot. So I'll mention that a little bit. So this is what we started with, I believe. You can see here what my automation looks like. Just the general sort of arcs like this. I find the quicker you go up like this and then down quicker rather than going like that. If we went something like this, it would sound more unrealistic. This gives it a more natural rise kind of thing. So that one there could do a bit of work, but it sounded okay. And now we're going up towards that ending there to have that big rise up. I believe there's a little bit of volume automation just at the beginning, yeah, just to make it flow in a little bit better again, which I normally do with anything really. It's not down to this library, but that's, yeah, really useful there. I think what I also did is here I turned the dynamic range up to about 60%. So by default it's on 0. By 0 it would sound like this. Still sounds good, right? So I just turn it up to 60 so you get a little bit more dynamic range in all of that. That's really it. And for all of this, the reverb and everything is built in, so it's just the reverb that's built in. I just turned it up to about 70 on some things and a little bit lower, and then I turned up the decay time on those as well. That's it. Then a few tweaks, like this is it. Bit of mixing. I'm going to go through each track as I go, I think. I'll show you, I'm going to go through each track and then I'm going to go through the mixing stuff, but it is just really basic EQ. Again, the only reason that I've done this EQ is for the context of the whole track. You have to do this with any sample library you have. This is just so that it fit better in the track. That's it. So, realistically, I will show you that later. I forgot what I was going to say now. Then we have the choir coming in later on around here, but it's playing the same part as the strings. It's there as like an additional color behind the strings. It's not a really big focus point. Now what I did is I turned the high notes up here by clicking in range, turning it on, and then going up like this, just going up to what I needed it on. I just wanted to go like one note up. So that's really useful, you know, with anything. If you need like a slightly higher range, like just that one note higher, that's really good to have that. So that's there, really cool little feature. Then what else? I think then I just added the Glockenspiel. No, Glockenspiel was a bit later, because that's taking the main melody and kind of just making it work with the chords here. So that's how I wanted to glue the pieces together, because they're kind of different I don't know how you'd say this, they're different kind of chord progressions and completely different keys, but that's why using the melody and making it slightly different and altered to fit those chords, slightly different progressions, it just made it really nicely fit together. I believe I then added the bass. That was quite later, that was after I wrote this bit. It's just playing the root notes. It's kind of acting as a drone. And that's it really, just hanging there as a drone. And then we have here, again, just changing as the whole kind of tonality of everything changes. So having that pedal note underneath the strings, it gives you a really nice kind of sound. We don't need this now. Oh, there we go. So here we've got that B flat. So it's kind of like we're in the key of B flat minor here. I'm pretty sure. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's B flat minor because we've got D flat there. Yeah, B flat minor. And then we have a nice modulation there, a Lydian kind of sound. So you've got this, which is our E flat chord, and that's just a very Lydian kind of sound that you would hear in film scores, so using the Lydian mode. And then it's the same kind of idea, just developed throughout, and then just modulating until I get to a point where we create this tension at the end, which then resolves into the next section, which is now in C minor. So we've gone from B flat minor to F, and then it ends on G major to then go to C minor, which is a really nice resolution going from G major to C minor. So then I added the Glockenspiel, and this is how it all sounded from here. This is what it's doing. So that's that. Then I wrote the rest of the track, and then these things were added later on. This was actually requested by some of the guys at Audio Imperia. So they gave me feedback and said that it needed some sort of pulse thing. So this was some sort of rhythm in the intro. So this is what this section sounds like. Strings and woodwinds together. And you'll see here I've just muted these because I realized they didn't actually need to happen here. It only felt like it needed to be on those second halves here until the very end where we go more intense. Cool, so you'll see just by the color of the notes in the velocity, that's what I was trying to do, like creating almost like this arc in there. Obviously it's not a long note, so you don't have the dynamics to sort of draw in, so I just did it by velocity, which sounded nice. And I believe that might be a little bit of volume automation to help with all of that as well. It's just subtly creating more of that arc like that. Just helps with everything altogether that section now sounds like this. Okay, and then here, the rest of the track is just kind of building on this idea, this new idea, which is this chromatic mediant kind of relationship that you get in film scores a lot. It was just based around these chord progressions. I wasn't, you know, when I wrote this, I didn't actually have a melody, and I wrote the melody to the chord progression. So I kind of had this, and then I had the strings, I believe, with it. And that's where I copied, obviously, the chords and stuff and made it a bit different, and then wrote this melody line in. Again, because you don't have legato instruments, it can be anything to, like, you know, like a really expressive slide or anything. So I just went for, so this is a case where I was kind of writing a little bit for the sample, for the melody in a way. The rest of it was fine, like chords and everything. But even then, I found it surprisingly easy to actually program this melody line without any legatos. It still sounded fine, just the way it's programmed, the library itself, and then the programming I did with it, it turned out really nice. I'm really happy with it. So the main idea is this whole brass section here, and that just builds and builds and builds until we get here. Now we are in C minor, but I didn't want it to keep going until the very end where you've got C minor again. So what I did was we then modulate up a semitone to get to D sharp or D flat, and it's the same sort of progression you'll see going up, and it's changing at the end. We're actually in, yeah, we're in C major at the end, but with an E in the bass, so that's the third in the bass. It gives you this tension, and then we, at the end, we start the next section in C minor again, like this. So a lot of modulation going on, and then at the end of the very piece we end in C major again, but with the root notes being C rather than E being in the bass, if that makes sense. So the whole idea is kind of based around this chord progression, and the melody was built on top of that. So this is an example where sometimes you might have a really nice chord progression that you like, and you don't necessarily have a melody yet, but you can use that chord progression to inform your melody. And you just, the way I do it, so let me just pause this, pause it, play it for you. So let's go here, let's play the chord progression in the brass. And then we go into the next section in C minor. Now you'll see this, it's kind of our idea, which is then repeated here, just that semitone higher, like I said, in D flat. The chord progression itself is just a very common thing that you hear in film scoring. Let me see where I am. I'm too high. Oh, that could work. There we go, yeah. So in film scoring you have something, well, it's not just for film scoring, but it's used in it a lot. There's something in music theory called the chromatic mediant relationship. So this kind of chord progression where you might have so that, for example, is going from C minor to B major. You'll see here, so notes in C minor are C, E flat, G. Okay. In order to create this kind of chord progression, all you need to do is change to a different chord that's not necessarily in the same key. It can be, but it won't sound as pleasing as this, I think. So you could, for example, go to E flat, which would be there. That's still going up a third, but you could do it voice led, so it'd sound nice. It's a bit nicer, voice led. That's important for this kind of thing as well. However, the idea, the kind of the simplest way I can explain this without going too depth into theory, which we can do in a separate video if you'd like, but I think it might be a bit too much for this. Essentially, you think about your moving, you can either, you can play around with this because it's kind of fun even if you don't know music theory. You just play around with either change, you just need to change 2 notes or 1 note, but just make sure that 1 note stays the same from the previous chord. You can find ones that give you a different sound that have no notes in from that key, but for that chords that you're playing, but they're linked to a different scale. Won't really go into that in this video, but for example, you can do C minor to B major because the E flat is the common note there. That's why it works. You could also go the other way, right? Or you could go completely different kind of sound. There's just so much that you can do here. That's very common to film scoring. There's just so many ways you can do it. So it's quite a fun thing to play around with. Completely different. But yeah, there's just so many things. It's just playing around with that idea. That's all it's doing. Okay, my camera has now turned off, so we'll just stay here. Okay, so again, the rest of this is just that same idea repeated over and over, kind of, and the whole track is based around this kind of idea. So that's it, really. That's all I'm doing there, and then this one is that other kind of chord progression that I showed you just when I was playing around there. Let's have a look. Let's have a look what else we added then. So I had the percussion and the pads and everything. That's all quite basic. So that's that. Then we have the Glockenspiel playing the actual melody. Here we go. So here, and I can show you again here, all we're doing is the melody. Like I said, I based this around the chord progression. So let me see. I mean, the strings, probably the strings is the best place to see it. So we have the chord progression going C minor to B flat, B major here. And the melody is just playing chords that we have within that, playing notes that we have within that chord with some passing tones. So we have C, then going D to E flat. E flat is also in C minor because C minor is C, E flat, G. So it's going C, D, E flat, and then we're going up to G flat or F sharp, but G flat, F sharp, sorry, which takes us to B major, and that's also in that chord, as you can see there. So that really is an easy way to write melodies to chord progressions. So if you have a really good chord progression, but you're like, oh my god, how am I going to write a melody to it? Just try writing something that, you know, has the notes in the chord there, and you have some other passing tones like that D here, for instance. It's the same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. It's the same thing. Here we finished on C major, like I said, and all I'm doing there you can see is G to C, just creating a nice jump there. That's all it is. It's just using notes that are in the chords. That's a really easy way. You know, if you're someone who struggles with writing melodies, then this is quite a good way for you to create a really cool chord progression and then write your melodies over the top of it. It's a really nice way to kind of get into it and get a feel for what melodies should sound like. Then yeah, that's really it. Oh, we also have a Woodwinds in this section, just layering the brass. So you can just see there, that's the difference. Just, it's the same chords, we just have different voicings between the brass. You can see that like this is just jumping up an octave in the Woodwinds here. Just creates a different kind of sound and colour. And yeah, we have all these little passing bits like this. This is just to create a bit of movement. You'll hear that. So that is kind of hinting at the melody a little bit there, as you can hear, and this is when the Glockenspiel has come in actually playing the melody. So it's all just building up to this section here, but we're using different keys. So starting out in C minor, no, sorry, not starting out in C minor, I had that wrong earlier. No, it is. Is this completely wrong? Oh, I was just looking at it completely wrong. Never mind me. Yeah, we are in C minor. And then as it progresses, we're changing keys here. Then we go up a semitone, doing the same kind of chord progression, going up to C sharp or D flat. Ending here on the G, which was in the bass here. And then we had the E here. So we have the E in the bass in the brass, but in the pads and everything, we have E. And we have the G quite close to it, so really creates this tense sound. We have everything here that has bass. You can see it's all very tense. We have, there we go, the E at the bottom, but the E is at the bottom of it, so it's the third, and then we have the third, we have the fifth, and there's the actual root notes. C, which is higher up, so it creates this tension before we then go into C minor here. Because if I just did C major here to C minor, but C major with C in the bass, it would sound like just a weird shift, too obvious, kind of a little bit newbie. Whereas this, having that third in the bass there and then going down into C minor, it's just a really nice progression. So if I just play you the chords. You'll be able to see that everything's just grown, like we're growing. That's the idea behind this thing. So if I just get everything in there, we might as well. Like we have a bit of information here, but that's just the Glockenspiel playing the melody really. But like you'll see it's just getting bigger and bigger. We're expanding the whole orchestration, the arrangement and everything. And then towards the end, what we're doing, again, if I get the dynamics up, you'll see that we're really going high up in the dynamics here. Especially in the choir, that's what really gives it, you'll hear it towards the end. That choir just gives it some real power. So in the first half, it's a bit calmer, around 60, 70, and then we go over 100 and really get big towards the end. Again, this is more of an additional layer in the background, but it really gives it that power. So if I just play, for example, everything without the choir in this final section, you'll hear how much the choir adds. can hear, really gives it some immense power to it there. Choir is really good for that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it with the track. You know, percussion is really simple. We have cymbals playing things. We have tam-tams just coming in. Where was it? Here. I wanted to show you. Just coming in. Again, they rang out too much, so I just brought that volume automation in there just for what I wanted. And then, yeah, just that's it, just accenting those big shifts to that new chord in that kind of chromatic mediant style. That's what we've done there. Again, I can do this in another video, a more in-depth video about the chromatic mediant. If you would like to look into this more, Rick Beato has a really good one on his channel. Recommend checking that out as well. And then in the end, the short notes, that's what I wanted to show you as well. This is just really simple. It's the same kind of idea as before. The dum 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 kind of idea, and then like a dum 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 at the top. So here we go. That's it, really. The only thing I wanted to mention here as well, obviously forgot to show you, so timpani is literally just playing the root notes, and then we have percussion as well, just adding a bit of movement in there. You can probably hear it in the track. Now, in terms of mixing, I just wanted to quickly touch on this. So before that, I just saw this. So make sure, obviously in Nucleus, every sample library, you're going to need some sort of track delay. Now what I really love about Audio Imperia sample libraries is that you can actually adjust that here with the sample start. So automatically it comes at 125, minus 125. So you can go in here, not in the region, but in your track, click on delay, and then type in what you want, minus 125, click enter, there you've got it. Now if you wanted the best, if this was say a legato instrument like a Nucleus full, and it's a really slow, lush, soaring melody, you could put it to minus 250 to have the best sound out of that delay, the legato, and just adjust the delay to minus 250. For this track, I just left everything at the standard it comes in at minus 125, but I just wanted to mention that you have really good control over that. So same for short notes. If you want to play it in, you could stick it to 0 to make it really playable, and then stick it back to minus 125, keep that there, and that really helps. Now I don't know if I don't know any big major libraries that give you that amount of control with that. Other libraries that I use, they don't really have that kind of control with that. They list what it is, but you can't necessarily adjust the, well, that's the dynamic range, Tom, but the sample start time like that. So that's really handy that you can do that. Another thing I wanted to mention is that you can adjust the vibrato. I didn't do it for this track, but you can adjust that as well and map it to whatever you want. So yeah, that's kind of that. Just remember to set your track delays. Any sample library you use will have some sort of delay, so if it's any other sample libraries you have from different developers and you haven't done this yet, check out the manuals from those sample libraries and really look at it, so you can have everything quantized like this nicely, or you can have it a bit looser. Obviously you don't have to have it as tight as I had it here for this track, but you can have it a bit looser, but at least it's going to be closer to the grid rather than making everything, you have to do this to make it in time. So this is just much easier, and especially if you're going to work with live players in the future, if you have to send this over to an orchestrator, it's going to save you or them or whoever else time trying to correct everything, moving everything back onto the beat and making sure it's nicely quantized. So this is just really helpful, and that's just a tip for any sample library you own, any orchestral sample library. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly interject here because I'm doing this the next day. I started editing the video and I realized I forgot this section that I actually wanted to add. So let's have a look what we can do here. So I just wanted to quickly go through all of this. As you can see, it's NLE, Nucleus Lite Edition, which we've been looking at. So this is all created with just Nucleus Lite Edition. What I wanted to actually do was to perhaps show you what it can sound like if you add a few things from Nucleus Full Edition. So it kind of gives you an idea what it'd be like from the Full Edition. So obviously I'm not going to change absolutely everything, but I'm just going to change a few things. Like for example, so let's split this out. Might as well get rid of turn it off for now. Let's just have a look. So we're going to have this as the first violins part, because we know it's going to be legato. They are already overlapping a little bit because some of this was played in live, but let's just make sure they all overlap now. So we want a legato transition. So let's just do that just to make it really obvious. And the idea with sustains is so that you can play those kind of chords with the sustain patch. Because I didn't have any legatos, I still wanted to create like a melody line, so you'll hear it. Still sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Even though that's just a sustain patch. So you heard that, how that sounded. Just bear that in mind. Alright, and now we've got the 16 violins here. We've got the legato. I could turn all these other articulations off because we don't actually need them. And you can also do this by just loading up the single patches. That's right, so you can just do it that way. But I'm just going to do it like this quickly. Now you'll hear this. So as you can hear there, that's what we have there. So that's violins 1. And let's go through and add these other sections in. So that sounds different to this. Now what I could obviously do is add some more layering, like I could do cello doubling what the basses are doing here, maybe change that to another violo part or something like, you know, something like that, really go into more detail, but it just gives you an idea. Like this suddenly sounds way more detailed and realistic. I think it's when that high note comes in here, the higher octave. Instantly just adds a bit of human emotion to it, like this. You know what I mean? You hear that transition, that legato transition, absolutely beautiful. The exact same thing can be applied. Let's just change the color of these. You could split this up and it would sound really good. It's the same thing for the choir, for example. So we don't have legato in choir, but we do have different articulations. And also in choir you have the individual actual sections. So you've got sopranos, altos, tenors and basses. So you could actually program it even more detailed than what I've got here because you've got the individual parts there. Now if you want something quicker, you can just go to full ensembles, choir, full ensemble. This is great if you just want to, you know, play around and put everything in there. And obviously when you have a full ensemble like this, same with the strings, there are overlaps because obviously you've got different instruments. You've got like the cello basses, violas, violins all together, kind of merging together. And it's the same here. You've got all the different singers kind of merging together. So you're going to have, it sounds bigger in a way sometimes with the full ensemble. So you could actually, like here, I could have this for the detail, and then slowly, well, quietly layer in that ensembles there, just from there, from the strings, to give it even more, you know, almost like width and a bigger sound. So that's pretty useful. Now here, what I'd do for the intro, for example, I would try, so it should sound pretty similar. Yeah. What I would personally try is the ooze, because the ooze are a little bit softer. Now this is something I have in Nucleus Full, so I'd put that for the intro, maybe the ooze, and then the R's for the outro, or the climax section. Actually, something I just realized, I did this really quickly when I was mocking it up, but I would leave a little pause at the end here, and at the end here possibly, just because that's where the singers need to breathe, you know. They're not like strings, they can't keep playing. You've seen me do that in brass and woodwinds there. They've got spaces where they would breathe. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea what you could do there. Then it's the same thing for brass. You could break it up here, for example, quickly. Now say we had that as the French horns or something, it would sound completely different, since you'll have that legato transition. And obviously I've got some mixing on here for the whole brass thing, which you wouldn't need. Which sounds way better. I hope that was useful. I just wanted to quickly show you that, like how you can make it sound different and more detailed when you've got these individual sections. Same for, you know, like spiccatos like this. That's a lot going on. Like you could break this up into violins, then violas, or violins, violoncelli, basses, or basses, celli, viola, violins, or basses or celli, violins and viola, you know, like this section. You could really break it up nicely and make some really nice sounds. So there's a lot you can do there, really. So some really interesting things that you could try out. It's just wanted to quickly show you all of that to give you an idea like what you can do with all these individual sections when you have something like the full version of Nucleus. The good news is, if you just literally want to be starting out and you want to start out with something like Nucleus Lite Edition, you can do that. And what will happen is you have whatever you paid for Nucleus Lite Edition, you have that as a credit to put towards the full version of Nucleus. So whenever you decide to buy the full version later on, or upgrade to it, you know, when you think the time's right, say you bought Nucleus Lite for $99, you've got that as a credit towards the full version of Nucleus, and you can just reach out to Audio Imperia's support team. Hope that was helpful, gives you an idea what you might be able to do there. Okay, all right, let's go back to the rest of the normal video. Cheers. So in terms of mixing, honestly, you know, some have more things than others, you'll see, but a lot of it, okay, choir seem to have the most EQ. Okay. Now, mastering, just a quick note before we get on to mixing. This is literally just here. I didn't really even touch, okay, a little bit of a boost there. That's pulled up to 8.1, really tiny adjustment there though. And then just the limiters there just to bump everything up a bit, make it a bit louder, up to kind of standards, but nothing crazy. And again, this, you'll see even in the loudest section, this is just a bit of glue compression for everything. It's kind of getting 1 dB, maybe close to 2, but it's not really going above that at all. So if you know anything on the master, make it subtle. That's just there for gluing everything together, and then some mastering, limiter at the end. So that's it really. But you'll see in terms of EQ, it's not really, I know it looks like a lot, but I've just got this cut here to make sure there's nothing low, because I don't need it out of this instrument. And then all I'm doing is, because later on we have this, cutting there, boosting a bit to get a bit more air in the sound. I'm just cutting some harsher frequencies, which you do get from higher woodwinds. They're always somewhere around there. So you'll see what this is doing. This is a dynamic EQ, so it's really handy. If I turn it off, it sounds like this. Obviously that is slightly affected by the mastering itself as well, but that's just giving you an idea what that sounds like. Let's have a look. Strings. It's just quite a basic thing, really. It's just controlling frequencies. In all strings you get some sort of like harsher frequencies around here. In the context, you know, on their own it might be okay. On the context of the mix, I like to sometimes just dip it there slightly just to see what it can do. This is it without it. Again, this is just there to protect the low end, just to keep it thicker with everything else. So that's what that's doing. Again, that's it really. I can go in more depth and show you all the EQs, but just wanted you to see that it's just really basic stuff. That was just cutting out a frequency that wasn't needed for this. It was a bit harsher. Timpani, what did we do here? Literally just a slight dip. Brass, that had a bit more going on. Low dip. And I like to have multiple instances of EQ when I'm like, so obviously I mixed it like this, then I had the other instruments and it's like, oh okay, we need a bit more presence here, a little bit less there, a little bit more of a boost, and then this was just a final little minor adjustment there. That's a personal preference thing. You could do it all in one instance of an EQ, but I just do it like that sometimes. And then same for the low. It's just shaping the sound a bit to fit the actual track a bit more. So you'll hear this without. These already, all of Nucleus already comes in this modern mix. You have the classic mix, which is just out of the microphones, what they get from the recordings. The modern mix is just a little bit more cleaned up, like very subtle adjustments with EQ and things like that. But that's just an extra cut there to make sure that no other, I tend to do that on anything that doesn't need that information, you know, to keep that bass a lot thicker with the usually some sort of pad or low brass or whatever. But that's that. Again on this, tiny bit of EQ because there's a little bit of too much, but I'm not cutting it all, and then a little boost on there. So that's it really. That's it. I didn't really do much else to it, and I don't want to make this too long for you all. So that's it. That's the track really. It's quite simple how it's all been put together, as you can see. And I would love to go into things like in more detail maybe in the future, like maybe about this whole chromatic mediant thing and what you can do, but you know, I just want to keep this simple for this video, but let me know if you'd like to see anything like that in the future. But yeah, that's it. So I think we're going to play through the track one more time. Let's see if this scroll thing works properly this time as well. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this and my mock-up, just let me know. And yeah, I'll get back to you when I can. Okay, so let's go for it. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this valuable, you know, seeing maybe how I wrote the whole thing with just 14 tracks using ensemble patches. Usually normal tracks go way beyond that, you know, like 80 to 100 tracks or more, because obviously you've got all the individual sections, like you've got in strings, you've got first violins, second violins, violas, cello, basses. Then you might have soloists within that, you know, things like this. It can just get really big, and you might have different tracks for different articulations, like longs and shorts. So yeah, I think I did pretty well to just do it in 14 tracks. I'm really impressed with how I could make it sound big with just that few amount of tracks. So it shows you really is possible nowadays to have just some sort of ensemble library like Nucleus Lite Edition and still write pretty good mock-ups. So yeah, you know, it's going to be limited to some degree. You're not going to have the full level of articulations like legatos. However, what you have there is really sufficient for getting started, and it's better than what I had starting out, which was just the stuck sounds in Logic. So if anyone's just starting out, this is an awesome starting point. So yeah, I hope you found it valuable, you know, seeing how I programmed everything, the slight mixing I did. I didn't really do that much, but things like that. And I hope you found some of the music theory stuff useful around the Chromatic Mediant. Go try it out. I'm sure you'll love the results with that. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and if you've got any requests for future videos, let me know down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to get back to you when I can. All right, cheers. Thanks guys. Stay well, stay healthy, and I will see you all soon. Cheers.